Hello everyone, welcome to Dark Fate Tarot. You are joining me on what is the end of a glorious day in Brussels. Welcome to new subscribers and welcome back to those who already know me. So yes, I'm going to be talking about iconic decks. This is a video that's being done on the fly, but it is a topic I've been thinking about quite a bit. And that is decks that I think that have really become a bit of a classic in tarot history. Now, let's get the big ones out of the way, which is the RWS, of course, the Tarot de Marseille, and the Thoth. Those decks are, of course, iconic because they are the quintessential beginnings of tarot in their own right. The Marseille being the first, of course. So we're not including those in this tag. Well, I'm not, but I'm more speaking about other decks over the course of time that I think have become iconic in tarot. Now, this is more recent years for me because of the fact that I have become a collector more in the last few years, having begun studying tarot when I was in 2014. But you know, these could be decks that for some others it could be much earlier on in the decades. So it's up to each person to decide what it feels right for you. There are 5 categories, categories, however you want to say it, to be answered, and feel free to tag along, play with this, and feel free to, of course, you know, give your thoughts behind each of your own responses if you are going to be doing a video. So without further ado, let me now jump into the very first question, which is a deck that began as a trend that then became a classic. So I was thinking of this initially, you know, very similar to, in a way, clothing. You know, there are different types of clothing which began as trends, but then years later it's kind of like that is actually going to become a staple now because people loved it so much. They always keep a spare, and even when it goes out of fashion, it will come back into fashion. And it's a bit like that with tarot, a deck that was trending quite a bit, but then it became iconic in its own right. And the deck that I thought of, which I personally think has become like that, is the Lightseers by Chris Anne. And the reason I think that is because today more and more people are learning tarot, and as more people are learning tarot, there's always the question of somebody's asking me, like, you know, which deck do you think I should get? And of course there's the original RWS and so forth, or Thoth, or however they want to begin. But it could be that the person is like, yeah, but I want something a bit more modern, or something that I can just really start off easily with. And I believe Chris Anne's The Lightseers deck has become quite iconic for that reason. It's kind of like, for me, it was a deck that was trendy in its own way, and I know that it's not perfect, but I think that it has become classic because it's kind of like the deck which everybody goes, if the person's new and they want something a bit more modern, direct them towards the Lightseers. Now, you may have another deck that falls into that category more, so would love to hear from you what you might think. But I think this Hay House deck, because it's mass market, it's retailing around the €20 mark here. I don't know what it is in the US right now, or North America overall. But because it's retailing around the €20 mark, it just means that it's more accessible. I'm not saying tarot decks are cheap, no way, but it's more accessible, and somebody could just start off with it. And of course, if they need to write on it, they edge it and it goes wrong, it's more replaceable as well. So I think that this just became iconic in so many ways in terms of accessibility, color, brightness, the modern images. There is some diversity. More could have been done there, but you know, it just is a deck that's easy like that. It can be read in terms of as a divination tool, but of course Chris Anne's booklet is amazing in terms of journal work, and more from a perspective of psychology as well. So I think that this deck for me began as kind of like, you know, it was new and it was edgy in that sense, but then it became a classic for the newcomer. And so yeah, I'm going to label this one right up there at the front. Perfect. So the second category that I'd like to introduce is a deck that was very forward for its time, very forward thinking, for its time. A deck that really kind of like was like, that broke ground. And this deck that I'm going to pull up, it's not one of my favorites, to be very honest with you. It's not a deck that I personally use that much. But now that I've had it, I appreciate what it was for. And I need to give it this space. I think it's time I did that. And that, I only have the pocket version, so you're going to have to forgive me. It is, of course, The Wild Unknown by Kim Krans. Now, I came up with this because this is actually one of the reasons why I wanted to do this tag, was that, yeah, this is a deck that a lot of people later have said to me, but that deck, it broke ground. And I have a friend, she's not a tarot deck collector. She does read tarot. And she has, you know, this is her deck. This is the deck that she is bonded to. She doesn't need anything else. She's like, I'm fine. I have this deck. I'm all good. It's enough for me. And so, you know, I just wanted to say that, you know, and this, I have the only little mini, so you can have to excuse me. These are the backs. But this deck, I think, really has become iconic in that sense. It's a deck that so many people, I think that it was very forward for its time because it broke a mold. It allowed a lot of people who needed different images to be able to access that. Of course, we are now out of, like, you know, it's no longer humanoids. It's pips, it's color, it's very black and white, and then pops of color. Basically, there's this line work. I mean, there's just so much to it. There's so much studies that have been done around this deck, and I thought that it's high time. And this is the deck actually that made me think of this video and doing this tag, because it is just so iconic for what it is in terms of allowing people to come into tarot and not have to face kind of like, you know, these are not my body types, or this is not how I see the world. It just gave them that entry and gateway. And I think it was very, very forward for its time. And Kim Krans' work has been known to be that. You know, she's continued to break ground. So this is not a deck that, very honestly speaking, I use that much, but I want to give it this space and I want to give it this honor because I think it deserves it. And truth be told, I think one of the reasons why I'm a bit put off is because I bought the pocket and I don't use pocket decks that much. So I'm thinking maybe I need to get the full size, or I don't know, I might get the Oracle either. But what I'm trying to say is that I think that I need to give Kim Krans' work the credit that it's due. I think that other people have already done that. And this for me is a deck that was very forward looking for its time. Okay, so that was The Wild Unknown, the pocket version by Kim Krans. And this is mass market as well. I think it's retailing around, I don't know, 10, 15 euros in Europe. So hopefully it's accessible over in the US as well. North America, I should say, sorry. Okay, so the next one is number 3, category number 3. A deck that transcends categories. Now, this was a bit of an odd one, but I wanted something that, it kind of like, it's a deck, for me, the way I'm describing these categories, it's a deck that I've seen people who like animal decks, people who like collages, people who like the real classics, people who like very surreal art, just different kinds of, you know, tarot, what I've seen on tarottube for sure, people of different, not just different backgrounds, but different tastes. This is a deck that I've noticed is it's a rallier. So maybe I need to rename this category, a deck that just rallies everybody, or everybody falls in love with it. Now, of course, there's going to be some people going to be like, no, that's not for me though. But this is just my take on it. And the deck that I see kind of quite a lot pop up again and again is The Shimmering Veil by Cilla Conway. Now, this is an indie deck, and I don't know I can't remember how much I paid for it. I think 60, 70 euros, something like that. I bought it from a boutique in within the EU. So this is an independent published deck. I picked it up because of a recommendation from somebody else. I hadn't even seen all the cards before I picked it up. And interestingly, it's the only Cilla Conway deck I have. But I think it's a deck, these are the sides, look at that gilding. Look at that. Now, this deck for me, really, it transcends categories and it rallies everybody. It's almost as if I still haven't encountered those persons who said this deck I cannot stand, or something like that. It might not be one that everybody keeps forever. Some people may be passing it on, but I believe that it has really crossed many different desks, may I say, many different tables, tarot tables, and been a hit with many. So yeah, it was the Shimmering Veil, and I just think I just think that it is gorgeous. It's a deck that really takes me into that liminal space, into a different zone. And I've seen it on so many people's, I was going to say again, desk, so many people's tables, desks, however you want to put it. People who might like the very traditional art, people who may like the more collage type art, people who really go for what is, decks that are very more towards, I don't know, graphics that are computational. I don't know how else to put it. People, tarot tubers from across spectrum, so many of them have this deck, have tried it, have at least liked it if they've not passed it on, or enjoyed it, or taken something from it. And so I think that this is a deck for me that really transcends, in a way, the whole tarot community in that sense. And I think that it's one of those decks that I'm going to have to, there's always something I can pick up from each card. It's almost kind of like, did I see that in that card? Is that what I saw? I am in another world when I'm with this deck. And yeah, I mean, look at that. That's amazing. Yeah, that's the Five of Wands. It's just an amazing deck in so many ways. Two of Pentacles, and yeah, and the colors, and just wow. So yeah, I mean, I don't want to actually keep going through this too much, because otherwise we'll be here all day with this deck. But you can just see it's very mesmerizing. And I'm sure if I was speaking to another tarot tuber and we were holding up these cards, they would say something else. They would have another memory or another feeling come up, or something else intuitively come up, which I think is a huge gift of this deck. So it makes it so relatable to so many people. Okay, so category number 4. A deck that represents an era. And I'm going to take out a deck which is still not my favorite deck of this whole category, of this era, but I believe it represents an era. And I think that other people will have a completely different deck to represent this, but I'm just going with what my gut told me. Got to be honest with this, just show it. And a deck for me that represents a whole era in tarot, but I think this can be done again with something else and another answer basically. I'm going to go with the Starchild by Daniel Noel. And I've spoken about this deck I think a few times now on this channel, but I've got to go with the Starchild by Daniel Noel because I think this deck spurred a whole new trend in tarot that has now become more classic. So it's not so much the Starchild being a classic, it's more kind of like its placement as being the first and iconic, for then sparing more. And so whether you like it or not, whether you love the pink or not, whether you're more of a Moonchild person or not, I believe this deck has a place in history in that sense. And so yeah, so I'm just going to quickly go through now my copy is the one that's generously being gifted by Nancy over at Paper Moon Tarot. And I still have it because I still love it. I still think this is, I mean, this is kind of like, this is like me and my pink heaven kind of thing. But yeah, this deck for me, just, there's something about the colors that just set me off in my mind. But I really believe that now that I've watched more and more, and I've done more and more research or studied or seen what people pick up, the collage world really, I think this deck was the one that just went bang, and Daniel Noel set off a whole trend in tarot. Now you may have a completely different deck for this. Maybe you have a tattoo deck, I don't know, that says this set off the whole tattoo trip. I don't know. I'm just speaking off the cuff here. But for me, the whole collage thing, and from what I understand now, I could be coming wrong. Somebody could be like, no, it was the Voyager Tarot. But I believe there are other collage decks that may have come before this one. But I think this is the one that got people really into that collage cosmic thing, which has now become something else. And now we have decks that are very different from the Star Child. But I believe that this is kind of like at the root of that whole, you know, it spurned then a whole other set of decks. So whether you like it or not, whether this one was for you or not and you passed it on, I do believe this is iconic. And it is. I love this deck. It was funny, I was thinking, should I get the Moonchild, which I now have because of Marine over at Waves of Your Soul? Should I get the Moonchild? Should I get the Star Child? And originally, my choice was always going to be the Star Child, and that was the first one that arrived from Gifted as well, so from another tarotuber. But and it's because personally, it's because of the colors. That's why. Although I love the Moonchild colors as well, but this is the one that's true to the inner me in some ways. Look at her. So yeah, so I really, really do. I love the forest in this deck. I love it. I know it's not for everyone, but I love it. This deck for me personally is reminiscent of a time in my life as well. But I think for this category, it's because of the fact that it gave a whole new trend in tarot. You know, now we have. I mean, I was gonna also show the she-wolf, but I believe this is the first one, so this is why it's iconic. But you know, we have the she-wolf now. We have the ritual tarot, and we have the talisman, we have more and more, we have we have so many of these collage decks that are beautiful, each one of them, like, I want them all kind of thing. But I think this is kind of like the one that said, you know, Daniel Noel's art really began with this one. Now, could be wrong. You could all be saying, no, it was the other one, it was the Moonchild. I don't know. But I picked the Star Child to showcase in this category. So there you go, and I'm still loving it. Okay, so, and then finally, my fifth category is a deck that you think that will age well. It's like fine wine, it ages well. A deck that stands the test of time. And finally, I made this video because of this deck. Like this deck and the wildunknown, they were the two that were like, you got to do this video. But this is the deck that has only recently come into my collection, so I haven't even showed it. Sometimes I do unwrapping, unboxings, whatever you want to call it on this channel, but with this one I didn't do that. But I opened it and I was just like, where have you been all my life? And then I haven't still done the research. I think this deck is now 3 years old, 3 or 4. To me, as soon as I opened it, it was like infinity. There's the word for it. So this is a deck that I have opened and just thought, I am pretty sure in my heart that in 5 or 6 years' time, this deck will just be as fresh as I got it. And then I'm going to do a wrap up. So I'll go to the wrap up. But this is the deck that was just kind of like, wow, that's quality. And quality, not just in terms of production, quality in terms of like the art. And so I'm very, very happy to say I'm finally managed to get a copy of Tarot of the Holy Spectrum, the standard edition. I also have the Infinity. We haven't got to that yet. But this is the standard edition. So this is the very first edition. Of course, this is a reprint. So I don't have the very first print, which I understand had a change in its, so this is the insides, which had a different kind of, I want to say, imprimer. I was about to say French, printing. It had a different imprint, because I want to say imprint. It had a different glaze, I understand, not glaze so much, but a hue that fell over the cards. And then the creator kind of did a refresh of that color to be what it was meant to be. So I don't have that very first print, which I think is quite iconic in itself. I have a reprint of the first edition. So this is the standard edition. These are these backs. And let me just tell you, I opened this deck and within 10 minutes of opening, I was just like, this is when I just think somebody has really thought about their tarot. So I'm just yeah, this is something that just kind of like floored me, this deck. Just the intelligence in the cards, just the amount of thought that's gone into its RWS system, Rider-Waite-Smith system. I think everything that I've shown here today, maybe I don't know about the wildunknown, but the rest definitely are Rider-Waite-Smith systems. But this deck for me just spoke so clearly, and from a different position though, from the normal, you know, the Emperor. It just, so we recognize the pictorial, but they have been now really put into a different, you know, I'm watching a film here, or I'm watching it through the lens. For me, this deck also for me personally, this is very much reminding me of watching movies growing up, American movies. There is something about this which is very classic to that land, and I don't know how else to put it in terms of culture. That's what I was going to say, culture. Of course, there are different decks that are reminiscent to that land in different ways, but I'm talking cultural iconic. And so for me, this deck just is groundbreaking for my collection, because it showed me a deck that in 5 or 6 or 7 or 10, 15 years time, maybe, I don't know, it will be something that will be like, wow, that's amazing. And I hear that about other decks, by the way, too. You know, I hear people saying, I've had that deck for, I don't know, 10 years, not this one, of course, but they're referring to a deck that they've had for 10 years, or, you know, even with the wildunknown, people have said, you know, like my friend, she only has the wildunknown. She goes, I've got that deck and I love it and I don't need anything else. I don't need to even buy anything else. That's it for me. And so, you know, for me, when I saw this deck, it really is a representation for me of a deck which I'm predicting here, but I think it's going to really stand the test of time. I've only got it 4 years, I think 4 years after it was produced, 3 or 4 years. And I am just completely and utterly, have to be careful here. I think they're stuck here somehow. Don't know what's happened there, hold on. But yeah, this is a deck that somehow it is, you know, it is standing over, it's standing heads and shoulders above many others which might age, but this one will be around, I think, in my collection for years to come. And I think that's because of the way it's been classically produced, but with this very modern, surreal art. Now, you know, as I say that, there are other decks, I think, that of course will fall into this category. I'm sure some of you are already scrambling for your Llewellyn and Low Scarabeo decks, which could just as easily be in these categories, just to be very frank. So I'm going off the cuff here because I'm one of those people that I don't want to sit too long on something, otherwise I'm not going to do it. I'm just one of those people, procrastinator here at heart, fear and procrastination driven. But so yeah, these are iconic decks for me, and maybe you have different visions of what is iconic for you, but those are my categories. So giving a sum up again, the very first category was, you know, a deck that was a trend that became a classic, a deck that was second category, a deck that was very forward for its time, groundbreaking for its time, a deck that really rallies people together. It's almost as if people from different spectrums all love it for some reason or another. So that was number 3, or you know, originally it was called a deck that transcends categories, but transcends, I think, the tarot community in some ways. Let's put it that way. Number 4 was a deck that that represents an era, a deck that kind of like came in and created a space and a category of its own, kind of like, yeah, and that makes me smile actually. But yeah, a deck that represents an era or the birth of, and spawned a whole new set of decks in its own right. And then finally, a deck that you think is going to age well and stand the test of time. Look at that card. That is stunning. Please, please, please stop me from buying like the Color Me edition, because I want to buy it and then color it in myself. It's just, yeah, this deck, I mean, look at that. Don't you think? I feel like I'm in a Quentin Tarantino movie when I see that. But this deck for me is just, yeah, that deck was the one that just, when I saw it last week and I was looking at it, I was like, I've got to do this video. I mean, tell me that this deck in 3 or 4 years time is not going to be just as amazing as the moment I opened it. And the other thing I just want to say in terms of Tarotland, if there is a deck producer out there, you've got to get hold of the person who did this deck, because the quality is just impeccable. It doesn't come with a guidebook, and I'm like, that's fine by me, because the quality of the cards is impeccable. So yeah, so there you go. So there we go. Thank you for watching. I hope that was fun for you. Maybe you want to join along. Wishing you all a wonderful week wherever you are, week ahead, and I will chat to you later soon. That always sounds a bit weird. I'll chat again to you soon. Have a lovely Saturday wherever you are. Take care now. Bye.